good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on whichever part of the world you are in. We are going to start this event very soon, and we are just waiting on a few of our guests, and then we'll soon kick this one off. Just a quick sound check. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. I can hear you as well, loud and clear.
Perfect. While we're waiting, I'll go ahead and just kind of introduce ourselves. Welcome, everybody, to episode 10 of XTalks, powered by Layer 1X blockchain. Thank you for listening in and being here. We're excited to have you. My name is Cody. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Layer 1X, a Layer 1 blockchain, and I will be your host for today's episode. While we're waiting, I just want to remind everybody that to mark your calendars, we have episode 11 of X Talks coming up on the 19th of January at 1 a.m. UTC. So you don't want to miss that one, as we're going to be diving into the Web3 gaming space in regards to interoperability, current problems, and solutions that may come from implementing interoperability in there. So, like we mentioned, let's just wait for a few minutes to make sure we've got everybody on board, and then we'll get going.
I think while we wait for our guests to hop in, I'll just share a few details regarding us, Layer 1X, and the things that are going over at our Discord. We do have a few competitions, some marketing campaigns, and stuff like that where you can win amazing prizes such as Layer 1X tokens and stuff like that. So if you are keen or interested on checking us out, we have the link to our Discord in our bio. So make sure you check that out, hop into our server, and say hi. Cody, would you like to give us any opening statements before we dive deep into the questions?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is going to be a great topic today. Just because of the technology that we're talking about, bridgeless interoperability and its potential to rewrite the finance rules as we know them. I think that it'll be a great discussion on whether or not become truly DeFi will become truly decentralized, um, or it could basically help power entities in the current space capitalize on and grow their control. So I think that that'll be a couple of good questions to go down, and I think it's going to be good to kind of see if there's some kind of reputation that DeFi has, if we're going to be able to overcome that, if interoperability will play a part in that. So, so yeah, I say let's dive in and let's get going. So before we do, let's do some quick little introductions. Thanks everybody that's on our panel today. We're excited to have you. If you wouldn't mind, please just taking a second to introduce yourselves and give us your 30-second elevator pitch, that would be great.
No. I can go. Brian Culligan, Alpha Growth founder, basically deployed over 200 grants in the crypto space, helping connect projects and chains and bridging and interoperability is a rad topic. Got heavily into DeFi with Sushi and currently running the BD and marketing for the Compound protocol.
Hello everyone. This is Abrayad from Nablify. Yeah, I'm the community manager at Nabla. Very much interested in DeFi and real world assets. Yeah, thanks for having me on the stage.
Hey guys, this is Henry. We're from Composable Finance. We also have a protocol called Picasso that is doing restaking and bringing IBC to Solana, and has already brought IBC to Polkadot, to Kusama, to Cosmos, and now we're in testnet for Ethereum to Cosmos, and then soon to Solana. I also wear another hat as a partner of Fundamental Labs, which is a well-known VC based out of Singapore. We've been around since 2016.
Hey guys, I am Key here and I live in Dubai. I am the founder of Forward Protocol, which is a drag and drop no code solution for dApp deployment that works across 800 chains, and it's already revenue positive, and we are soon hitting the market. The product is live. Apart from that, we are running an accelerator and a fund in Dubai, Key Difference Labs and Key Difference Capital. So our whole ecosystem is focused on bringing Web 2 businesses to Web 3. I've been 10 years in the world of blockchain, played multiple roles across the space, from leading crypto news media giants as CMO to helping founders market and go live and so on and so forth. So super excited to be in the space today.
Hey guys, it's Andrew Luban. I'm joining from Pulsar.ai. We're the business development hire there, business development executive. I've been in the space for a long time. Some angel investing, was COO of an NFT marketplace. Before that, I was a professional athlete, but now I'm bringing and growing the ecosystem at Pulsar. We scrape all of the NFT marketplaces and all the chains, and then make it searchable using our AI for keyword search and a personalized search.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
All right, it's finally working. Sorry, I've been having a little issues as always with Twitter Spaces. I'll jump in with a quick intro. I'm Dan Goldman, the founder and CEO of AllTrade. In a nutshell, AllTrade is one of the world's first bridgeless cross-chain order book dexes. It's a new trading technology that's coming finally to the market to enable you to trade like you would on a centralized exchange with all the capabilities and UX, but completely non-custodially, with shared liquidity across all 12 plus chains that we support, with no bridging, which I believe is relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. And not only that, AllTrade is what we call DeFi as a service infrastructure, which means any project can actually launch the entire platform and provide branded cross-chain trading services to their users, self-list their own token for trading, reducing their reliance on centralized exchanges for listings, and basically create a global network of exchanges that work together, but each of them actually has its own brand, earns their own trading fees, self-lists their token, and create a new way for trading in the market that is non-custodial, with order books across many, many chains.
Yeah, I'll take the opportunity. Hey everyone, this is Jonathan. I'm a guardian of Nabla.fi. Nabla is a upcoming next generation AMM. We're doing away with impermanent loss and a lot of other cool things. So hopefully that is interesting. And yeah, I've been involved with crypto a lot, going way back over 10 years. I've been browsing a lot of ecosystems. Have been coming from the Polkadot ecosystem and now back in the EVM space. So yeah, excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, I'll take the opportunity here. My name is Jay. I'm one of the co-founders of Supersite. We're building crypto-specific large language models. So on the on-chain side, we firstly let you search. You can search things like who bought X and Y NFT, who are the top 10 traders in somewhere like GMX, who bought Lido between these prices in the last 30 days. And then there's the off-chain side as well. What is account abstraction? What are ZK proofs? And then both of those worlds come together when you search something like, why did the price of Bored Apes go down? And on the on-chain side, it might be that 2 people sold 15. On the off-chain side, it might be that there was a negative news piece around the founders. So that's what we're doing. Been in the space since 2017. Super pumped for this. Thank you for bringing us on, Layer One.
So I think those are all of the introductions, or am I missing someone, Cody?
I'm just going down through the list. I think that's everyone. We might have a few stragglers here and there, but as they come on, just kind of watch for them, and we'll give them an opportunity to give us our 30-second elevator pitch. But in the meantime, for the sake of time, let's just jump in and start talking about today's topic. So interoperability and DeFi, can they go hand in hand together? That's the questions that we're going to be proposing. And it sounds like we've got a lot of great experts in the DeFi space joining us today. And yeah, so let's get going. If you do have any questions for our panelists, just make sure that you drop those in the comments. Sam will be looking for those, and he'll get those promoted to us so that we can answer those questions for you. So the first topic, kind of breaking them down into a couple of different sections. The first section I want to talk about today is DeFi's future and the power dynamics behind what you view will be happening in 2024 and beyond with DeFi. And the first question, I guess, is based around decentralization versus control. Will interoperability help basically democratize the DeFi space, or will it empower existing entities to basically grow their control and they're capitalize on new opportunities to control their user base? Not directed towards anybody, so if you want to jump in on that question, go ahead.
Can you maybe clarify what you mean by control? In other words, are you, since you're mentioning decentralization and DeFi, etc., are we thinking about control in terms of market share, walled gardens, keeping the users in a specific application versus the decentralization of certain apps versus not?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Just gain in market share, gain over regulatory control. It could be government. It could be specific, individuals. It could be different projects. Just kind of seeing where the conversation will go from there.
Well, let's say what kind of like the gorillas in the market. The 10,000-pound gorillas. Once they have a new technology they can utilize, it is certainly easier for them to further grow, right? They can utilize these new technologies and they have a huge user base. So it's easy for them to utilize a new technology and gain more market share or cement their grasp on the market, right? So a Uniswap or whatever, right? One of the big boys can certainly find ways to utilize these new technologies and keep some, keep a grasp on their user base. And for newcomers, obviously, things are more difficult, right, to penetrate the market. So I'm trying to think like where do you want to go with this, right? Because that's a pretty clear thing, right? If they find a way to utilize a new technology to improve their offerings, they will probably do so, right?
I think to jump in here, The moment we talk about this, we need to divide this into two layers. I can see those two layers emerging in the world of DeFi. So one, obviously, as you said, we would have more and more big players trying to use the existing products, improvise and consolidate. But DeFi to me is not products. DeFi to me is a layer of yield generation or layer of opportunities, financial opportunities. So I'm thinking about more new innovative products coming on in the layer of DeFi, which is it works across multiple chains or not. It's up to them. But they're creating different interesting financial models of earning higher returns, higher yields, and so on. And the second layer, which is the emerging layer, which I can only notice from Q3 of 2023 to be prominent, is the application layer, which is focused on traditional or general users, public who are not on the crypto side, who don't fully understand or can use Aave directly. I mean, if they can use Aave directly, they would rather use it, but they don't. It's similar to how you have liquid staking coins instead of just going and running your own node. So it's having further layers of simplicity that groups things. Like if you are using Binance and you're part of Binance Earn, you see that a lot of DeFi products are grouped there. You don't know what products they are. You just go put your money in. It's simple. It's you park the money there. It's even automatic. But then they go around, use various DeFi products out there to make it work. And you don't know what other chains they're using out there as well. So I can see that layer coming in, more and more of those wallets, simplified solutions, alternative saving solutions, and real world assets playing a key role towards this. People launching RWA based products, which uses a way to park the idle capital on DeFi on a safe way, simple lending and borrowing protocols. But they also do have their own asset classes and their own internal DeFi based on the asset classes, based on validated liquidity, and so on. So it's a new layer or new subsectors because DeFi is growing. It's growing with, on one side, permission, blockchains, and serious government business, regulated business on the other side, innovative mechanisms, yield mechanisms. On the third, it's a combination, new ways of leveraging yields based on existing tools. So these apps are a beautiful layer that's up and coming. They're purely a connector, like a middleware that connects DeFi to an user who needs simplicity. And yeah, I think we need to take into consideration all these different layers and angles as well.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. I see we've got a couple of hands up. Just feel free to jump into the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing. Go ahead, Brian. You were before me.
You got it.
Yeah, I would just add. I think the interesting way, an interesting way to frame this is the monsters, the big players, the gorillas, is just the amount of capital, whether it's the boomer capital or Web2 capital or those who have not really entered the space yet. It's still a massive group, right? So I think the fascinating thing is how DeFi protocols, how new ways of generating yield, new products kind of interact with this massive group. Right? If we can bridge all of this, let's call it boomer capital or traditional capital that hasn't entered Web3 yet, I think there's a lot to be said about how it's going to be regulated. What is DeFi? I think the law, unfortunately, at the moment doesn't really have a clear way to say who can custody what, how do we frame it, how do we package it, how do we interpret it. I think this is really the key innovation that a lot of the bigger players and the gorillas in the crypto space have to figure out, and they have to find a way to bring a lot of those players into the space. But DeFi still is kind of run by some of these bigger players, some degens, and it's still being productized in a palatable way that then can bring a lot of this capital into the space. But it will be fascinating to watch, and I think there's still plenty of room for innovation. It's the class of innovators dilemma of who is going to productize these, and then how are we going to make it palatable for these bigger players to enter the space.
Totally. It's a giant question on decentralization versus centralization. Two key points that I think are kind of a little bit counterparty to like what most people talk about in crypto is like a lot of people say, hey, we need a better UI UX to bring the next million users, next billion users, and I think that's there's you have security and you have rational self control, and really in a good UX. And the easier it is to access something, and then the better UX it has, the less security it has. So when you're talking centralization versus decentralization, what you're talking about is the blend of security and UX at the core, because the easier it is to use, the easier it is to ape in and supply liquidity, the easier it is for somebody to take it from you. The more security that you have, and the harder it is for somebody to hack your wallet. I think that's kind of one of the conversations on centralization versus decentralization. The whole point of decentralization is that nobody can take it, right? As soon as you get to more centralized interfaces, you don't have radical self-reliance and total control over your assets. And so I think that's one point around centralization versus decentralization. The other thing, and kind of coming from the compound angle, what I'm seeing in the markets, we're going to these other, centralized kind of exchanges and kind of yield-bearing constructs from more traditional finance and centralized exchanges, and saying, hey, what can we do with you together at Compound? And like, hey, bro, we don't need you anymore. Like, your code's been out there in open source for almost 4 years. We're going to launch our own protocol and internalize it and just use the code that you guys built. Unless you have something more for us, we already have all the distribution. We already have all the TVL. We don't need you in your protocol anymore. So there's another angle here of like, who has the distribution pipeline of users? Whoever has the distribution pipeline of users can streamline and verticalize what protocols that they use and how centralized or decentralized they want to have it. So I think those are the two balances between centralization and decentralization. Is one, security, and then the second part is whoever owns the users owns the flow, owns the trade flow, and whoever owns the trade flow owns the yield.
Yeah, I think from the security standpoint, I would say we already have a bunch of products that are already coming out to help with the security in the DeFi space. We have products like Wallet Guard and Revoke.cash and a bunch of other security products that are coming. But the most important thing is like trying to make sure that during the onboarding process of people to the DeFi space, they tend to go through this part of the security first before they can even think of interacting with these protocols. And from the interoperability standpoint, I would look at it in terms of the liquidity providing, since I work with an AMM project, and what I see interoperability doing in AMMs is it's going to allow creation of cross-chain liquidity pools, which can increase the efficiency of trading and reducing transaction cost in general.
Perfect. Saw a couple of extra hands up. If you want to jump up, if not, I'm moving on to kind of a follow-up question. Thanks, everybody. Those are some great insights to think about when it comes to how interoperability can play, how DeFi, what's facing DeFi, some problems and some solutions as well. One of the things that we're kind of battling with DeFi is that it's unfortunately earned a negative reputation for being full of scammers, pump and dump schemes, developer rug pulls, and these are coming from the eyes of many new crypto users or investors, as well as non-crypto investors. Do you think that we can overcome the security issues, basically this negative connotation that has kind of started building around DeFi? Do you feel that we can overcome this reputation?
I personally believe that overcoming the reputation there's no one straight answer to this, because it's a community developed one. Everyone complained about not having the freedom. Well, you have a freedom right now, but you it comes with responsibility. And that responsibility means education. Does it require everyone to learn the code to be able to read and function? Well, that's what blockchain is made for with the smart contracts. We call it smart contracts. It's transparent. It's not transparent unless someone cannot read and understand it, but that's the fact. This is the language it speaks, and this is the nature of how it works, which is why you have tools out there which are crowdsourcing security, where multiple entities test something and they can display ratings to show what is safe, what is not safe. But there's a lot of complexity. You could say something is safe, but it's not the same contract linked on the application when you're using it. The issues will exist. And the only way to circumvent that is to have that layer that deals with the challenges by removing it away from the users, like this centralized applications or user-focused applications, even if it's non-custodial, but still it's app that simplifies the journey on behalf of the user, where the application is responsible to choosing the right DeFi protocol, the right contract, and right interaction, and so on. So someone has to do the job. The freedom was asked and the freedom was given, but someone has to still take care it's the right thing, and they need to choose the ones with the right liquidity, constantly be aware if some new vulnerability is released and deal with it. So unless that is taken care, I mean, it's not that easy. It's not just about DeFi applications. We know that stable coins can go crazy at times. So it's not just about, okay, I have a great amount of USDC parked in this particular place. Is it safe? No, USDC, USDT, BUSD, none of those matter. End of the day, what you use can all be subject to troubles. So being that cautious, full-time focused on managing these assets is a job, and someone has to do that if you want that full freedom. Otherwise, you do use other tools, middlewares, or applications that simplify that for you. But someone has to do that. It's not going to happen by itself. And the scams and the challenges, I don't think they will go away. And I don't think blockchain is even meant for them to go away, because it's about freedom, right? You could go deploy something yourself tomorrow and delete it. I mean, remove it or stop, take the liquidity out of it. It's your choice. It's your wallet. It's a public blockchain. You can deploy anything in any name and do whatever you want with it. There's, it's called as a scam or rug pull from the perspective of the other player. Maybe someone was just playing with it. There's been so many different apps out there where they did say things along the lines. It's completely alpha software, and there's no guarantee, warranty. Use it if you like with the risk. So I believe the solution is that new layers of products being developed, someone dealing with that to ensure that the end user are protected. And if the end user go ahead to a point where they want the highest level of protection, probably there'll be banking products out there which will leverage DeFi in the future and help with the lending, borrowing yields. It's not too far. I mean, if you have Bitcoin and Ethereum starting to trade on all those NASDAQ and exchanges, it's not going to be too far for DeFi products integrated into banking. Sure, it could be probably the safest if you can wait for another few years.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. So I kind of want to jump back to something that I believe it was Brian that mentioned. It's a balance between security and UX, and blending it at its core. Do you feel that we can have our cake and eat it too, in the sense of providing good user experience, and keep our users safe when it comes to security?
So I'm not a security expert, so I can't really kind of totally answer that question. But I know building other kind of payment apps and Web 2, what we found was the easier it's access to the capital, the easier it is to get the capital out, the easier it is to kind of become hackable. So, I think it's a feature and not a bug. So people think like the UX and DeFi and wallets right now is a bug, and I actually think it's a feature. Like the more the more levels of security and keys and ledgers that you have, the harder it is to get in and out of your capital. It's annoying as heck to have like LP positions and voting on LP positions with a multi-sig, but at some certain point you have to have that layer of security at some value. So then the opposite is true too. We're working with a client that has a wallet integrated in with Telegram, and that wallet that's integrated with Telegram, if you get your Telegram hacked, they basically have access to your wallet, right? So, obviously I'm not going to put anything more than a couple $1,000s in that wallet, but now I have a Telegram wallet with, pocket change kind of walking around with. So I think there's different use cases for different aspects of this where you need a lot of security and when you don't need a lot of security, depending upon those use cases, the right level of security kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I'm gonna have to jump real quick, but I just wanted to kind of share some of the work in the Cosmos ecosystem with the audience, and so that everyone can kind of start doing a little bit of research on the inter-blockchain communication. In terms of, I guess, cross ecosystem communication protocol, IBC has been has been driving the most volume out of all and has been the most stable. And particularly, it does not have any trust in multi-sig and uses light client technology for both chains that they're interacting and just trusting the consensus and validators on the both chains at the chain level. So we decided to adopt that, and building DeFi on top of the IBC is on the roadmap for us for both Composable and Picasso. So without understanding kind of the brilliance of the inter-blockchain communication, it's difficult to understand how much better it is than any other sort of multi-sig solutions for DeFi. So I think in terms of securities, it has to be trust minimized, and there's really no other option out there in the market today besides IBC. That is the most battle tested, and that is the core component of the Cosmos ecosystem, which has been getting a lot of attention in the last several months or so. So just want to encourage everyone to take a look at that, and yeah, I'd love to chat more. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. Appreciate it. So it looks like we just had a person join the stage. I believe it's Margaret. Margaret, do you want to introduce yourself and just give us your quick 30-second elevator pitch for your project?
Hey, hi, I'm Margaret Rosenfeld, and I am with Cube Exchange. We are a platform that combines a DEX with a SEX together. So you have a centralized user experience on the trading platform, but when it comes to custody, we have a MPC technology that we built from zero, and that is a non-custodial vault that we use for it.
Perfect. Thank you. Just to kind of take a quick check here real quick. For those that are just joining us, my name is Cody and I'm the host of XTalks AMA today, episode 10. And we're talking about interoperability and how it will change DeFi forever. So let's continue the conversation and let's move on to a different kind of area of questions regarding regulation and user experience. And so one of the questions that I have around that is, as projects begin to develop interoperability into their platforms, ecosystems, as we'll just call it country regulations start taking hold in the DeFi space, and specifically trying to regulate specific chains that projects might be built on, as interoperability gets introduced, do you feel that this is going to be harder for them to regulate, or is it something that will be welcomed and easier for regulators to come in and take hold of?
Yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot of demand for regulation from the actual user base. I feel like this is much more orchestrated from, well, let's say the political cast to actually, get a hold of the Web3 space. So I don't really feel like anybody is actually in favor of more regulation or added regulation. I feel like most of the things that are already illegal, theft, etc., would perhaps be covered. I'm not an expert here, but in my mind, it should be very similar if you're stealing a digital asset or somebody's car tires. So yeah, I don't really feel like this is going to do the industry good as a whole. And of course, especially with interoperability, if you rely on some messaging from the Ethereum chain to output data on another chain, and regulation is getting in the way of that, well, it kind of messes up your interoperability protocol. But I'm kind of hopeful that regulators will give up rather soon. If Ethereum is getting regulated and therefore is becoming unfeasible to use, well, you might as well fork the chain, use Ethereum Classic. There's, of course, drawbacks to migrating, but yeah, there is no real final solution for regulators to really put a hold on it. And I'm very hopeful that, this will hopefully turn out true.
I think they'll just go after the big, the documentaries around this, around the big cases where people did wrong and it was kind of public. They'll carry on going after those people to make an example of them. And obviously the blockchain is very public. There's a history behind there. So anyone who's done a reasonably serious level of crime might be chased after. But equally, if they really wanted to, they could, you're already seeing this in some countries, on-ramps, off-ramps are being affected. But as the industry matures, I think we'll be fine. I think a lot of people will still be able to do what they want. Things like ZKs are going to come. There are going to be privacy chains as well, right? So there's always going to be this use case for people who truly want to be a bit private, a bit anonymized, and not really in the public eye, so to speak.
I'm the chief legal officer for Cube Exchange, so spend a lot of time globally interacting with regulators. And they, it's only been within the last 18 months that regulators have wrapped their head around what is Web3, the difference between centralized, decentralized. So throwing into the mix concepts of like interoperability when talking with them, uh, they're not even yet at that education level on the technology. Generally, some places are. So, and some people within regulators are. But it's just like when we went through the experiences in late 1990s through now, educating on Web 1 and Web 2. We had to spend a lot of time going into global regulators, talking to them about what the technologies can do, what they had to be concerned about. So as long as you talk to regulators in their language as much as possible, and and know what regulators' missions are. So from the securities regulator in every country has essentially the same mission. They want to protect the retail investors mainly. They don't worry as much about the institutionals, the moms and pops. And so they want to make sure that whatever you're putting out there is not going to be put out without full disclosure about what it's about. They also are concerned about the financial stability of their geographic market. So they don't want to let something into their market that could harm that stability. And then you have some countries that, beyond that, are concerned about, non-country entities coming into their market, and kind of a nativistic sort of geographic approach. So if you go towards the regulators and you are addressing those things in how you talk, I think it's helpful. But also just be aware that the technology education and using lots of terms that interoperability, centralized, decentralized, consensus, proof of reserves, all of these terms, like this is a whole new lexicon to them. And so be aware of that when you walk into them.
Thanks for sharing. I think you bring up a lot of good points in that sense. For us over here at Layer 1X, one of the things that we are definitely trying to do, because we are a bridgeless, true native interoperability for not only access to be able to trade, access to TVL, but we're able to basically transact with passing of logic and data across. So meaning that we can have a contract on Ethereum speak with a contract on Binance and interact with each other through a single click, right? And so I think that for us, it's all about raising the standard in the projects that build on us and trying to foster a level of quality and something that we can try to get behind with the regulatory as they step in, trying to understand the different chains and what they do. Our goal is that we don't want to compete with other chains. We definitely want to try to unite them, because I feel like it definitely opens the horizons of opportunity, not only for the blockchains, but for the projects that build on them, to be able to tap into new resources, new audiences, new users, that kind of stuff. So with that being said, would regulatory hinder some projects, DeFi projects, using interoperability to tap into other chains if those chains are being heavily regulated by government entities or even by the chain itself? Would you feel like that would hinder your decision to move to that chain and partake, or do you feel like it is something that you would want to build into your protocol to help sustain and the quality and security of it?
Yeah, I think at Pulsar, right, we're using AI generated search to make an upstream Google search for NFTs. So if NFTs were productized for different type of DeFi applications, we want to be chain agnostic. So something that we have to be cognizant of is if we are bridging or sending search results to a specific chain, the fact is, and Margaret pointed it out, the regulators don't even have a lexicon in many cases to say, yes, this is legal, no, it's not. It's just something that you have to be super wary of. So it's a gray area. You can get an opinion from 10 different white shoe law firms, and you can get 10 different opinions. So I think it's still a gray area and something that we're trying to navigate. But it's something to be aware of as if your company wants to be involved in this space. Yeah.
You can buy an opinion anywhere. So like I'd be wary of even not the white shoe ones. I was in law firms working in crypto for a long time before I went in house here, and we all know the firms that you can go and get the opinions from, but opinion doesn't protect you from uh, if the regulator comes calling, and it doesn't at all. Usually those opinions also have so many caveats that and assumptions, it doesn't they again don't protect you. So you've got to, I think you have to know what you're doing and do really good diligence on the chains that you are going to interact with. For us, we act as a centralized interoperability layer between chains, kind of like the same function as proof of reserves, but better because we never take custody, right? It's but with the change that we're going to integrate, and we're in the process. We had our early access launch in November, so we're in the process of integrating change. Is we're going through those chains that we are going to integrate with, and we're doing the careful review and diligence on what are they doing, what is the view of them globally. And there are a lot of great chains. Like, the great thing is there are amazing chains out there that have incredible management, great staff that support it in the foundations. And then there are a lot of chains that pop up, and we all know them, and you're like, yeah, this is going to be this is where all the rugs are going to go. Come on, we know it. So I think you have to be aware of that. So one big question I always have is, do you just have interoperability with every single chain, or do we have a responsibility to kind of police ourselves somewhat?
Yeah, I think definitely, as you already said, in terms of being interoperable with every chain, you would have to be very careful with the kinds of chains you want to have on your protocol or on your project. because definitely, as you know, you already said, some chains we already know the kind of things happening on those chains. Those are the chains you don't want to get yourself connected with, because it might also bring the attention of these legal entities to your product as well, since you are interacting with these chains that has a lot of these rogues and all these negative stuffs on the in the blockchain space.
And I think it's also not like you want to have this approach and diligence of who you're interacting with, not just because of the regulatory concerns, but just for concerns of reputation of your own project and what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility. You mentioned, Margaret, before of basically kind of forgot the term you used, but just self-regulation of our own protocol, of our own ecosystem that we develop. And I agree 100%. I think that it starts with the project, individual projects, and then it kind of goes out from there, right? So, if we look at that, I think there's also the security risk, going back to what Brian was talking about earlier with the security and the UX side of it. I think that as we start tapping into these other blockchains for growth purposes, let's just go down that avenue, right? We need more users to keep the protocols going, and to have that influx of capital. And with that raises a lot of security risks too, because we've been talking about reputation, but also, is that blockchain up to standard with what kind of level of programming you're doing, right? And we've seen quite a few different projects. At least I have over my experience of 6 years in crypto. Of just when it comes to DeFi projects, it just seems like a lot of developers are just taking seniorage type protocols and basically forking them and making a copy of them and taking all the exploits with them and just being lazy when it comes to that kind of stuff, throwing a new skin on it, and it's a new project, right? Even though it's the same fork of something else. How do you feel that how do you feel like we can help change the mentality of just forking and actually trying to or I should say innovate in the space?
I would say the protocols that are building on those chains, it will be their responsibility to really dive deep when they're doing research on the chains they want to build on, to ensure that this issue is not associated with those particular chains. And then when those kind of developers that are into just forking the chains and using them, when they start seeing that people are not interested in building on their chains because of this and this reasons, they would definitely be working towards fixing that up, or the new ones that are building, they would work towards ensuring they have optimized their chains to the level where it will be very interesting and eye-catching for all those protocols and projects to build on.
I also think, I mean, if are we talking hard forks or soft forks? I mean, we've seen some good hard forks occur. Ethereum back in 2016. But with a soft fork for users, at least it's backward compatible, right? So, and yeah, how do you encourage this? I mean, there are different reasons forks occur, and sometimes it's just management project disagreement. Other times there's really good reasons for it happening. So I don't think that you can come up with a general philosophy towards it. You have to look at the facts and circumstances of why a particular fork might be occurring.
Apologies.
So living in the DC area, I think there's two stories I can tell. I was once at a kid's birthday party, and I started talking to somebody, and I was like, "Yeah, I work in crypto," and they're like, "Oh, cool! I'm writing the rules and regulations for the CDVC or whatever, the central bank digital currency." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Yeah." And she's like, "This is amazing. I never talked to one of you." I was like, "Talk to you? What do you mean?" She's like, "I never talked to a crypto entrepreneur before." So I think a lot of this stuff on the rules and regulation, it kind of turns out that they're kind of building in a vacuum, unfortunately. And I was like really shocked. And we talked for about like an hour about the different opportunities and that were available. And what kind of her take was like, oh, a lot of this stuff is just like scams, and the permissionless nature of things like allows for too much potential scams and stuff like that. And kind of like where we kind of both agreed and landed on at the end of the conversation was like, hey, if you want the regulated token and the regulated chain, cool. Like everybody wants to play safe space, great, you can play over here. But at the end of the day, like this is a permissionless protocol for like $50, $100 worth of ETH that can like launch a contract, and I can have like a new financial primitive launched, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. So you kind of regulation definitely does stifle innovation, but you kind of need both, right? You don't want the grandmas of the world or people with their entire pension get lost in a rug, but you also need a place where you can have financial innovation and new DeFi primitives created without kind of regulatory constriction of it, because the regulatory constriction creates too much capital. It requires too much capital to comply. So you want the Vegas where it's like YOLO and everybody can go play and rug and like invent new financial primitives, and you also want kind of like the stable conservative types of DeFi, and that's my opinion. And hopefully, and if you kind of constrict everything to regulation, you're not going to get as much financial innovation. So I think there's always a place for both.
If I may, I'll give you like a quick summary of what I've observed. I've been in this ecosystem for give or take 12 years now, coming around 12 years. And prior to that, I had a day job in normal finance. So regulation, I would agree, does have a place. And there's a cost of regulation. There's like you could think of, two sides of a coin. So regulation, increases the cost, and it also suppresses innovation in one sense. So if you were to compare like a typical very large bank, if you look at the fines they pay, the total amount of the gross they spend on complying by all the compliance regulations is quite high. Like you could have like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 startups just the amount they spend paying fines, right? So there's that bit of it. And the other side of it is like, how does, one get the right kind of behaviors without going to this rigmarole of the key I would say is like always regulation catches up with innovation. Day one, what happens is like whatever innovation happens, it happens. And the people in regulation, they just wait for it to get to a steady state, and they have enough of time for them to respond. So they would go back to it and kind of come up with a bunch of regulations that might or might not help. And hopefully, if it works, it'll be very good. I just wanted to add one other point that somebody else was speaking about just before me about forking. There is a prime reason, cryptoeconomic reason why fork seems to always happen. A fork whenever it happens, irrespective of the outcome on the long run, produces a lot of liquidity for everybody in both the original protocol and the fork protocol. And this is definitely incentive misalignment. Yeah, these are the two things I just want to mention. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for providing your insight. Appreciate it. So just a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here. One of the main focuses, as we all know, in Web3 is to move to more decentralization and giving the power back to the users. One of the focuses that we're focused on at Layer 1X is also decentralized digital identities, and being able to provide the power, empowering the user to control their own data, to no matter the chain that they're on, building their digital identities. Is this something that you feel is important to implement in 2024 into DeFi? Is the ability to tap into these decentralized identities that people are trying to establish?
I can jump in on this. I believe this is crucial right now because we are no longer in the early stage. This is going to be very helpful for people who are hardcore crypto enthusiasts, people who are already in there for a couple of years or more. If you go back to 2017 to 2021, yeah, sure, you had 1, 2, 3, 4 wallets disposable. You had transactions in them, but you always had one primary wallet. You had a bunch of different applications you interacted with. When I say bunch of them, probably it's 2 apps that you interacted with. Life was simple. But right now, every one of us, we not only have few dozens of wallets because of the history over the period of time, we ended up with more wallets. Not every wallet is in MetaMask or the like. There are many which are dedicated. They have their own version, own way to access it. You have certain things on your mobile app, and then you have a lot of dApps. It's not just one version of the dApp. Like take an example of Aave. You have version 2, you have some money there. You have version 3, you have some money there. And on top of it, 10 different chains for each of those things. So it's an extremely complex situation. Even something as simple as a Nansen's portfolio is very helpful, where it brings all the different dApps from all the different chains and consolidates it to give a perspective. Although I don't agree on the user experience of that at this point in time. So with digital identities, it is important to bring that along in one place combined. So a user, at least for the record keeping purpose, knows what they are, who they are, what actually still belongs to them, and their digital footprint in the blockchain space, and the way they want to represent it. Because right now it's still fragmented, members with multiple OpenSea wallets and different chains where they're participating. It's just very hard for them to represent themselves in a unified way. And these digital identities are a need at this point, not because it's fancy, not because it's a trend, not because it has a major application. It does have a major application moving forward 2025 and beyond. But right now, it's a matter of necessity. It's a matter of comfort, and something I believe just makes user experience of people who are in the space long enough much better.
You
Am
know,
I allowed to?
I
Sorry, go ahead. You go first. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The concept of digital identity has been around for a while. Of we should have that. And just in banking. So if you look at banks need to have corresponding bank relationships with other banks in order to operate throughout the world. And if they don't, and you see that issue in the U.S., for example, related to banks that deal in crypto have trouble getting corresponding banks in the U.S., and that means therefore they can't really get access to our payment system in the U.S. as a result. And so, if you even just take it from not even looking at the decentralized digital asset, just but like the concept of a digital asset that can be passported and used by smaller banks, etc., that gets rid of this corresponding bank idea. That would be just one simple step. That would be amazing and change a lot of things. But I do think decentralized identity overall, or digital identity and decentralized, is going to be a major theme for us in 24 and 25. This is how we get to the place of fully decentralized finance eventually. But we can't do that without this decentralized identity infrastructure being built up.
I mean, if I may, I just wanted to add a couple of things. As I was saying, like I've been a researcher prior to getting into crypto, so in my research days, I've done some work on identity schemes, and I sat on the ISO committee for work group 3 and work group 4. And being in crypto all this years, one of the things I noticed is like we are going through the same process we went through in Web 2. for identity schemes and identity standards. And that, if you go on Google or Wayback Machine and see the number of failed identity schemes, it will tell us how much of energy, time, and resources were wasted in trying to get, in one sense, acceptable identity. And the other part of this thing that we need to recognize is, even though identity schemes were there, there was always some effort spent on having privacy. And I am kind of not sure that the current set of all layer ones have the construct of privacy in the right place, in the right order, with the right priority. That one need to understand is like in the machine learning world, where there's an arbitrage between people who have access to data who could run machine learning pipelines versus people who don't have access to data who could run pipelines. You know who's going to win, right? And if we were to have an identity scheme, and if we were able to map this back to all the public chains, that is a very, very, very interesting scenario. And so whenever we think about identity schemes, we definitely need to rethink the way in which we would create one, how it would interoperate, and what would be the criteria for accepting an identity, right? So identity in general is like a composition of claims that somebody makes. You can have some fancy cryptographic mechanism like ZK to create them, but I guess this bridge between the real world and the virtual world is a challenging one. And we haven't, as far as I can see, we haven't really thought this through. We have had a whole bunch of projects that's coming in, that some of them have succeeded, some disappeared. If we go forward and we have some schemes, we probably need to spend some time understanding lessons learned both from Web 2 and Web 3 and like incorporate those lessons so we don't end up having more failures and more cycles where all the data that we have is in public and all the things, like all the upsides and downsides of that sense.
Yeah, I think you bring up a couple of good points. I know that as we've been educating our communities on the importance of digital identity, especially evolving into the Web3 space, and taking control of their data, taking control of their Web3 experience, and in essence, there's been a little bit of pushback because it's all about the anonymous kind of atmosphere that crypto brings, right? And so by building out an identity, it does make people feel a little uncomfortable that they're going to be putting their information out. But I believe that it really boils down to being able to control, being able to, in that sense of being able to having a user be able to share the certain information that they want to share with specific people, and being able to revoke that access as needed is going to be paramount. And so, with that being said, one of my follow-up questions to that is I come from a space of the SaaS development world, right? So software development, and I've seen big companies have absolute control over their user data. And in today's world, data is king. It's the currency of Web 2, right? And so as we kind of move towards Web 3, do you think that projects, chains, things like that, do you think that we can share the data and come together in a universal form to form this digital identity? Or do you feel that the change will happen as users begin to take control of their data and begin allowing different projects, devices, things like that to utilize their data?
So if I may add like my 2 cents. So just to be completely clear, I've actually given a talk a very, very long while ago. The title of the talk was My Identity, Your Service. And literally we are revisiting. This is in 2010, okay? You can just Google it and find it. And this is in the identity as a service thing when the previous speaker was talking about software as a service. This was the kind of thinking we had at that point in time. And what has effectively happened is, firstly, there has to be incentive alignment. So typically, any identity provider, the identity provider bootstrapping is like the most expensive thing for identity schemes. and somebody has to put the money down. It's a long-term game, right? And the second part is like once this is set up, then there's a network effect. The virus that is highest ability to infect enough people and don't kill people survives the most. I mean, talking of comparing identity schemes to viruses, right? So this is effectively that's going to happen. So there could be different scenarios, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I've seen what has happened over the years in various identity schemes. So given you were talking about identities and enterprises, one of the reasons why identities and enterprises were really, they can lay down what they want is because first, the identity store is completely owned by the enterprise, right? If you were to look at your contract, they actually own your, data, right? So then they have the ability to say whatever they want. And then there's this predominance of MS stack, right? So the Active Directory plus other rubbish and other rubbish, plus other people have now started in. So there's Google and their services, right? All of that, they exist because of this network effect. Once you are in this ecosystem, it's easy for you to run federation. So if you are in a Microsoft stack, if you want to interoperate with somebody else, you can turn on federation and then you can make it work. So the way I'm thinking is like something similar might happen in the Web3 world. One or two of the protocols might gain enough of attraction, so that's a high chance that randomly, if you were to pick one format or a protocol, this will be one of the many. And then because interoperability adds value to everybody, there's some sort of a federation or bridging or something like that might happen as well. This is my 2 cents worth. I don't know how it's going to be.
No, those are some great insights. Thanks for sharing. So we are over by about 7 minutes, so we'll wrap things up here. Thank you for everybody that has joined us today. One last question. If you want to jump in, great. If not, after that, we'll just kind of wrap things up. But the question for you guys is how or what do you feel is going to be some of the challenges that will need to be overcome in DeFi in 2024? And yeah, so if you want to jump in and give your last kind of comments, that would be great.
Yeah, I think I'll tack on to the identity in DeFi in 2024 and segue there. The big conversation that I'm having is really around identity, KYC, AML, RWAs access, because the on-ramps and off-ramps of these things will require KYC, AML, and different types of new identity schemes, particularly around RWAs. There's a whole lot of interested parties in getting things on chains, because the concept is if we get these RWAs on chains, there's more access to capital. More access to capital, there's more liquidity in the markets. There's more liquidity in the markets. There's more fun new DeFi primitives that we can build. So in terms of interoperability, identity, I think they're absolutely required for real world assets coming on chain, and I'm excited to hear more solutions around that, and also looking for real world assets from the context of Compound protocol. So if you have a real world asset and you want to get it listed on a Compound, please feel free to contact me. We are actively looking as part of our mandate in 2024.
Yeah, I think if you look at the vast majority of DeFi projects, they actually have elements of some centralized control.
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is being selective as an organization, as a startup, as a company, into what chains you're going to work with, how you're going to kind of ensure that those chains are secure, what those bridging protocols are like, and what ultimately you feel comfortable maintaining as a brand for your users. It was a great conversation about the legal ramifications, but the reality is as innovators in this space, we are upstream of the regulators. So the decisions we're going to make have to be vetted internally, have to be self-governed as an industry, and first as a leader as your company. And from there, you can make a decision that you feel good about your end users. So I think it's going to be vitally important and something for all of us in this room to hopefully be cognizant of, so we can help to grow the space and legitimize it in a really meaningful way.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. Margaret, you were saying something.
Sure, no problem. I think the majority of DeFi products actually have certain elements of centralized control in them. And so I'd like to see more of a focus on transparency about what projects really are doing, not what they hope to do for their users out there. We all have what we're planning towards, but like being really transparent, here's where we're at right now, and here is where we're going. Because we are, and I also think 24 is sort of a bridge period where we will see a lot of hybrids, and the hybrids are going to help us move to the eventual decentralized concept that Web3 promises us. So that's a lot of what I would see. And as that happens, I also think it's going to be just another huge trend is RWAs, and the tokenization of everything is going to be driving a lot of this, which is going to be a great driver for DeFi to start to take hold.
Hi there. So I just wanted to add 2 lines just to be sure that everybody gets their views across. So in Europe, MiCA is going to happen by December. It is going to be an interest. I'm not a regulator. I'm not a lawyer. I've been a cryptographer, but built protocols. So, my understanding of law is limited, but I've actually talked to the regulators multiple times and advised regulators at times. So that to me is an interesting construct. And similarly, everybody that spoke before me also mentioned regulation. So, the requirement of KYC, KYT is going to be very, very interesting. I know someone else was saying that, we as decentralized projects should think through what we do, have consensus, then publish what is happening. I want to add a couple of things so that everybody understands what we are talking about. If you were to look at Ethereum, for possibly the largest chain which we have right now, and look at all the L2s that are there, pretty much all of them have some sort of a mechanism of a multisig underlying, with less than 15 people having the key shares. So if that is the gold standard for decentralization, well, we can all reach decentralization. But again, as I said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how to define decentralization by legal means. There are definitely interesting trade-offs that we as DeFi have to come to terms with, because the trilemma is real. Unless you can bend space and time, there is no way in hell that we can actually create trade-offs that people claim they can make, which I find ridiculous, because it's like, simply second law of thermodynamics is thrown out of the window. People with no understanding of cryptography or consensus or basic physics talks very interesting stuff, and the regulators who have no ability to understand any of this looks at the worst case and then make pass laws, and then makes it very difficult for people who are fair and honest and say what they do and explain everything they do to everybody else to operate. And that's something I think we all need to consider.
100%. 100%. Does anybody else have anything they would like to add? Okay, if not, before we close out this episode, thanks. Let's give a big thanks to everybody that was on our panelist today as a panelist, and for their participation. Sounds like you guys have got some great projects that you're working on. Can't wait to see what you guys do. I agree with a lot of the things that were mentioned today of coming together and us forming the standard of raising the bar, in essence, for projects to help users feel secure, safe, and basically be able to participate in the decentralization and financial opportunities of DeFi. So again, please mark your calendars for episode number 11 of XTalks on the 19th of January at 1 a.m. UTC. Again, we'll be discussing Web3 gaming and interoperability, current problems and solutions. So until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of innovation and to unite all of crypto. And everybody have a good day, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Cody. And
Thank you.
just before we wrap up, I wanted to add that we do have many competitions and stuff like that running in our Layer 1x Discord. So if you aren't in yet, the link is on our bio. And thank you for joining. See you again in the next episode of XTalks. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Great
everybody. Bye-bye.
Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.